All right, crypto market update, folks. Looking at the Bitcoin price, it's kind of interesting. You can see that it had a very specific throwback to retest prior resistance as support. In fact, it kind of even popped a double bottom here. So see how it responds to that. Looks like we kind of broke out of the immediate downwards run. So we'll see if this can pick up momentum. A lot of people, like market sentiment wise, a lot of people, I mean, there's definitely some validity to this for sure. It's always good to kind of explore that bear scenario, but I'm seeing a lot of people comparing the current fractal to this, the fractal top of late 2017, where you can kind of see it runs up, has a dead cat, you know, makes a lower low, bounces. And obviously, like if this broke down, then it would kind of be this fractal playing out, right? If this snaps support here. That said, it's one thing to look at the fractal, but it's another thing to actually just look at the meta picture and identify where Bitcoin is at in relation to its market cycle. In my opinion, I personally think it's a little bit too premature and a sign of disbelief that people are already calling for another bear trend. People are saying that, some people are saying that this is just a bull trap, that this fractal indicates we're going back into another bear cycle, so on and so forth. And even though all of those, there's always a possibility of those things being true, right? It's not, nothing's ever absolute. So it's not like there's 100% probability that it's going to stay bullish, right? You never know, right? Things can happen in crypto. That said, the way I see it, at least in my perception, is I think it's more probable that we continue on with the bull trend. And that doesn't mean there's not going to be shakeouts along the way. That doesn't mean there's not going to be periods of chop or long, boring periods of consolidation. In fact, in order for this bull trend to stay healthy, I would welcome those things, you know, more consolidation and stuff on Bitcoin. That's good. I prefer when Bitcoin's doing this and consolidating than when it just starts shooting up straight vertical, right? So as it was kind of going on this little mini parabola, it's just like a small parabola. It's not like the major one that we had on the last phase of the cycle, but pretty much like right here was the break of the parabola, right? Just kind of ramped up and then it snapped and broke the parabola just like here. And that's why people are comparing it to, you know, the fractals over here. But, and then also I've seen, you know, some people even look at the monthly. And when you look at the monthly, you know, these two wicks up here are definitely an indication of sellers stepping in. So, you know, one possibility obviously is if it were just a smaller double top, lower high double top, that would be the most extreme bear case scenario, would be for it to come crashing back down like that, right? That'd be the most extreme bear case scenario. However, just because there are wicks to the upside, just because sellers stepped in on a parabolic market, I mean, myself included, as well as other participants, doesn't necessarily mean this has to be a bearish top. Like this does look like a tweezer top. So obviously sellers stepped in. However, if we look at the previous cycle on the monthly, we can see other large sell-offs, right? Large wicks. In fact, we already kind of looked at this wick before, but just a percentage of this wick on the monthly, it was a 25% drop on that one wick, right? So the most recent one on the monthly is about 22%, just to put things in perspective, right? So bullish case scenario would be we continue to consolidate, right? Kind of forming, you know, trend lines are dynamic, they shift. We had this trend line, but we still have We still have support in through here on a trend line, and even larger trend line when you think about it. There's a possibility that this trend line here could consolidate into a nice large symmetrical triangle, right? We could be in the process of forming a symmetrical triangle, and that would actually line up very similarly to the 2015 parabola that we spoke about many times. And this is the 2015 parabola. So we looked at this several times, and this is what I'm kind of comparing it to, right? And this is nasty. I mean, this crash looked even uglier at the time, right? Zoom in, right? So this is what happened over here. This started off as a symmetrical triangle on this parabola, kind of similar to what we have now, a parabola that turns into symmetrical triangle that eventually leads, see, it was symmetrical right here. And then as it broke out of that, suddenly it shifted into an ascending. Little bit of a stop border hunting here, kind of, right? Wick down and then broke out. So the triangles can transform. So right now it's just a symmetrical. However, if it flips full bull, like right now it's still a bullish structure, but the symmetrical triangle is pretty tight. So if it widened up and we start to consolidate up above the 10K zone, if we can, if we can actually clear resistance in through here, let's say 11K, and then start to consolidate up and through here, then that could actually lengthen out a bit and form an ascending triangle that could even take us into the fall, right? I wouldn't mind seeing that. So far, we've been getting nice consolidation. We'll see. Obviously, it could wick down. I still, I had set some orders at 85. I wanted to be lean slightly towards the greedy side of things, aim just like a little bit lower, even though the structure right here is fairly nice. And I know Chris already scaled in. I've specified many times, though, trading Bitcoin for me comes with an added cost that I have to factor in. My taxes on profit trading Bitcoin on or even position trading or whatever, my taxes are a little bit higher. It's not just the profit I make on the immediate trade. It's also a cost average based on the average price of all my previous Bitcoin investment. So it could actually end up being a bit more than the usual, right? It can be like the profit plus the longer term gains, immediate profit plus the longer term gains, right? Which is kind of unfortunate. I mean, that's one value proposition for futures is obviously you can trade something. You can trade something that's isolated where it's not necessarily just Bitcoin on the spot market, but that comes with other risks and stuff. So I'd like to actually focus on altcoins that I don't own. If I want to do like smaller swing trades or whatnot, I think I would rather focus on something I'm not long-term invested on, just because it'd be cheaper for me and I'd save more money tax-wise. But the problem is Bitcoin is its own unique market, right? And a lot of altcoins are just kind of slaves to that market due to correlation and such. So kind of becomes tricky. For me, sometimes it becomes a bit of a existential problem. So that's why I set my orders a little bit lower, just to be a little bit greedier. And it's like, you know what? If it bounces off of here, I'm happy. The whole market structure stays bullish. That's obviously good for altcoins and for the entire markets and for Bitcoin, my long-term holdings. I'm not going to complain or fuss about it not hitting my buy orders. But if it just so happened to want to have a quick washout, snap up and then bounce, then suddenly I've got some fills probably like at the max, maybe not the max threshold. You could probably go even up down to like all the way down to low 8 and still remain a bullish correction, in my opinion, right? It could still create a larger pattern over a longer time span, even if it went down that low, as we've seen with 2015, but we've discussed that, right? So, so far, so good. I mean, fundamentally and stuff, we've got Backed, LedgerX, bunch of other stuff that's been launching, TD Ameritrade, lots of good stuff. Industry's growing, markets are maturing. To me, this is, maybe it's just my personal bias, but this, to me, the bull trend just started, the bull cycle just started. And this is like, phase 1, right? Which is the initial parabolic advance out of the accumulation range, which we already saw in 2015. Phase 2 is quite enjoyable if we do go into phase 2, because this is where you just get long periods of consolidation and higher lows and then breakouts and then so on and so forth. Then, if we can consolidate here for a length of time, then obviously a breakout above this level to test all-time high is only 47%. The longer the water builds in this hose, pressure builds, the higher the probability. I mean, if we had a larger consolidation pattern, this would literally probably start testing all-time highs within a week, I would imagine, right? Probably ramp up, start to see some large candles and so on and so forth, right? Question, do you think it would be safer to trade large dollar amounts on Backed or TD instead of Coinbase? That depends. Depends on insurance, right? I don't know all the underlying details of terms and conditions because I'm not trading on any of those platforms. However, if any of them offer insurance, like I think Backed was saying that they'd be fully insured, so on and so forth, it could also end up making your accounting a little bit easier, but you're also relying on counterparty, right? But if they're insured and are legit, then it's less of a counterparty risk than a crypto exchange, but you're not necessarily, but you're talking trading. Obviously, if you're investing, you're probably just going to buy some Bitcoin and stash it away on your own hardware wallet, I would imagine. Nothing beats that. But as far as like trading, which large size, I do think that eventually stuff like Backed or TD Ameritrade, if it's insured, and as long as it's not using like excessive leverage and stuff like that, I do think it could be a safer option. So that's Bitcoin. A little bit of a mix in altcoins. I'll talk about Tezos and I'll talk about my thoughts on Leo. So obviously everyone probably knows the news that Coinbase Pro is going to be listing Tezos. Deposits start on Monday. I do like the way they announced that. They did it at a good time. We had this consolidation pattern and we just kind of like broke out of this immediate descending line, right? So we're testing that point, and then they made the announcement and we had a nice clean breakout, and now we're breaking out of horizontal resistance, right? And they gave a week leading up to it to create enough time for a nice little FOMO rally. So all of that, is pretty good timing, all things considering. Now we're breaking a second level here. The question is, are we going to ramp and break this high leading up to Monday? And then obviously as it gets listed for trading, we're going to see a sell in the news, right? What's it going to look like? Well, if we break the all-time high right here, then I think, if we could do that leading up to Monday, then I think $3.50 would probably be an interesting area if it did break, where it could top out, sell on the news type thing. Sell on the news doesn't necessarily mean the market's going to be dead, so on and so forth. Predominantly because they also have the Coinbase custody. So any institutional player wants to buy some Tezos and stake it and get to vote, but have it in custodial service, perhaps even insured. I have to double check that. I thought I heard something about some kind of insurance in relation to that. Does anybody know if Coinbase custody is insured? My memory was that would have been an interesting feature, anyways, if it is. That's like next level crypto right there, but it's extremely hard to find any insurance company who wants to underwrite crypto just because it's extremely risky, right? Let's see, someone says, unless it pulls a chain link. Let's just look at link here. So yeah, basically got listed, pumped, and then sold on the news, right? Pumped for like 3 days after listing and then sold. What was it doing prior to that? Okay, so the listing was on 6/28. When was it announced? Does anybody remember what day it was announced on? This would be the most recent. Let me just look at this. I'll look it up. Dun, dun, dun. Of Chainlink today, yada yada. Now supports Chainlink 26. All right, so all right, 627. 627's right here. So it went parabolic. After it got listed, it went parabolic, and then it had a big crash. So something like this happens with Tezos. Probably take a little bit of profit off the table, even though I'm long-term bullish, and I would anticipate and expect much higher prices. I have much higher price targets, but there could be an immediate shorter-term trade, and perhaps if it spikes up, goes parabolic like that, one takes some profit on maybe a percentage of one's holdings, and then even buy back in. If I could buy back in at buy it all 50%, keep the other 50% in cash, some of it to pay tax and some of it hard profit, buy back my coins, could be one of those type of scenarios. But I'm just talking with much smaller percentage, maybe like 5% or something like that. Nothing, most of it would still remain baking. I don't want to stop the baking cycle and stuff like that. But if I start to see a parabolic candle like that, could be a good indication to take a little bit of profit off the table, right? And I'd let folks know. But this went up quite aggressively. I mean, this is pretty much like a 10x. So we'll see. Maybe it shoots up even higher than that fib level. So we'll see. And maybe it doesn't do anything at all. And it just kind of goes up a little bit more. But thus far, it's been breaking out. So, but obviously, big sell in the news. We've seen this time and time again with Coinbase. It likes to dump on the news, but in this case, it seemed like it sold 3 days after the news, so it had a little bit of a rally. And like we've even seen this for Bcash on GDAX. Anybody remember this? I think actually at one point it was at $9,000 and they just froze the price. And then from there, it was just selling the news. Now, what if you look at the other side of that equation? It went extreme parabolic. Like this was, if you look at other exchanges, this was just extreme, right? Like there's a lot that went into that, right? Big gains that went into that. It wasn't just, it was at least over a 10x, right? So, that's like category 5 alt season right there, batting down the hatches. Anyways, so if I see anything like that on any market, my hands get forced to take some profit, right? But it could have, market like that can have multiple cycles where it does that. And I think eventually we'll end up seeing, so we kind of projected and knew that it would be, logically, it'd be inevitable it would get listed on Coinbase because of Coinbase custody. We know the Winklevoss twins are Tezos investors. Eventually, we might see it in Gemini, which would give access to New York residents. Maybe they're just waiting for all that lawsuit crap to blow over. And then it's on a Binance wallet as a staking feature, a wallet that Binance is part owners of or whatnot. So eventually it'll probably get listed there as well. And I don't think a single listing fee was paid. And that's what I'm talking about. It might take some time. And a lot of people, I was reading for the longest time in the Tezos Reddit that they're blaming all their woes on a lack of exchange listings. Well, it takes time. The markets need to catch up with the fundamentals inevitably, right? When you have the fundamentals on new tech that's groundbreaking and, it's a network and so on and so forth, the market hasn't caught up yet. It's just because the market's not fully aware of it. It's kind of like a slow cooker that's under people's radars. And in a lot of ways, that's a good thing. And then suddenly it gets listed on major exchanges and then it starts to get on people's radars. We've seen the volume increase on Tezos. I mean, it was pushing like 4 or 5 million. It would fluctuate. It went up to 18 million the other day. I don't see any evidence of, wash trading, anything like that. It seems like a lot of organic volume. So that's a good thing. And slowly but surely it's getting listed on multiple exchanges. And, the liquidity is not terrible. I've been watching the liquidity grow as well. So that's Tezos. Obviously, like it's still my largest altcoin position. Well, Bitcoin has gone up a lot dollar-wise too. So I'd have to I think they're kind of more balanced now because the Bitcoin price rose up. So they're a lot more balanced, but it's my largest altcoin position for sure. And so that's that. That's Tezos. Recently, I decided to roll the dice or swing the bat on a much riskier play, but I kind of like the model. This is the thing. I like the model, and I know it's riskier because it's Bitfinex, and they're being investigated by New York right now into the whole Tether situation, all that kind of stuff. They had an IEO where they basically raised $1 billion from and gave Leo token. And that billion is to capitalize the missing money that they needed for Tether. I think they were like 80%. It was 80% backed, but there was some money that was confiscated by crypto capital and so on and so forth. A big mess. I mean, we don't know what's happening behind the scenes. So this is why it's risky, right? This is speculative from the outside. We don't know that the health of the company and the situation on the inside, right? Just like Quadriga. I mean, I was using Quadriga for years, reliably, withdrawing money. And then suddenly, they go, but the guy dies, they go bust. And then all these stories come out that he was gambling with people's money and there was all this shady stuff happening. And what seemed like a legitimate operation was actually quite sketchy, right? But there's nothing on the surface to indicate that. Customer service was good. I mean, for the most part, they start to have issues in the last year. So that was a bit of a warning and an indication. So we never know, right? We don't know if things like that are happening behind the scenes on Bitfinex. That said, Bitfinex has been hacked a few times. They've recovered from each hack. One of the hacks was a token. They gave you a token and they said, we're like, okay, we lost, I forget how much it was. I think it was 70 million or something like that. And I think it was in 2016 they lost, I could probably even pull it up on the chart. Anyways, that doesn't matter where it was. So they lost like 70 million and they did socialized losses. So everyone took a haircut, but they said, okay, so everyone's taking a 30% haircut. However, we will give you these tokens and these tokens will be redeemed from us, from our future profit at $1. Well, sure enough, when these tokens hit the exchange, everyone hit the exit and sold, right? They not panic sold, but some just sold out of anger, some sold out of whatever, just to redeem the money. It was really a bet as to whether or not you think Bitfinex would recover. And, that's almost kind of like a coin toss when you think about it, because many exchanges have gone bust and never recovered, such as Cryptopia, Cryptsy, Quadriga CX, Mt. Gox. I mean, the list goes on, right? There's a huge list of exchanges. So, so at one point they were 30 cents on the dollar. You could buy them 30 cents on a dollar. So technically, one could have, if one truly believed in their solvency, their ability to recover, they could have basically bought these dollar tokens arbitrage and bought these dollar tokens for 30 cents and basically just triple your money, right? And that's what happened. They came out profitable. They recovered and they bought back. They did a buyback. They bought back all the tokens and everyone got $1 for their tokens, right? Except for the people who sold below $1. So there was some possible profit to have been made in that situation. So I have seen or experienced instance where there was a similar token mechanism when they're in hot water before, and they did buy it all back. The interesting thing is, also I should specify, this isn't available to U.S. residents. So obviously they're having issues with the U.S. and so on and so forth, and it's in their terms and conditions, not for U.S. residents, U.S. citizens, or residents, I think. I think if you're a citizen and you live in another country, you could probably do it, but if you're a resident, not so much, right? So I think it's resident dependent. But don't quote me on that because you'd probably want to consult your lawyer, right? I'm not a lawyer in that regard, or in general, I'm not a lawyer. Anyways, all that to say, it is risky, right? Because we don't know what's happening on the back end. But here's the upside and what I see. So I started off with the risk, and the upside is I decided to buy some. A small amount, not a massive amount, enough that if it popped to 10x or 20x, it would certainly be interesting and worth my while. But if it went to zero, it's not going to break the bank. If it went to zero, whatever, doesn't matter. That's a starter position. I might add, depending on future news. So let me just kind of look at this. So the whole model and the premise of this is, where are you? Okay, there's actually less supply than this. You can kind of see there's a burn site. So basically they're using, I think it was 25% of the profit. You don't have to hold it on an exchange. It's an ERC20, so you can actually hold it in a Trezor on MyEther wallet. That said, if the exchange goes bust, the token's probably going to be worthless. If the exchange ever went bankrupt, if it suffered another major hack, if the government ever shut it down, it could literally go to zero. So I kind of see this as like one of those all or nothing plays. Like you can, if they succeed and they come out, Bitfinex is obviously very profitable, right? Well, according to them, they're profitable. And they've been around since, I think, 2013, at the very least. So they've been around a while. They now launched 100x leverage futures. We know how insanely profitable that's been for BitMEX. Put BitMEX on the top of the map, the top dog, top player as a result of that. Now, Bitfinex has been a big player too as far as spot volume and their margins. So now they're putting steroids in that. So that's going to be even more profit, more liquidity. So the buybacks could end up being more aggressive, and they're doing the buybacks live, right? So you can kind of see the live buybacks. Let me just pull that chart up. So I kind of like that model because the buybacks create scarcity. We've seen it with BNB, except this is actually taking it off of the market, whereas I think BNB wasn't always necessarily pulling it off of the market. So it just shows all the amounts burned. They just buy it back and they destroy it, right? So you can kind of see the amount that they buy off the market. Eventually, so it's saying there's 995. So obviously CoinMarketCap has to update. So if you want it live, this is saying 999. It's already at 995, right? That's basically about 4 million that's being burned, 4 million that's been burned since it launched. And if it survives, or if there's bullish news, like suddenly everything blows over with the investigation and it's back to business as usual, they'll probably end up, I think now it's a lot lower. They'll probably end up being a bull rush if there's bullish news, right? I think there's a lot of uncertainty in the market right now. Obviously, it's a riskier play. It's not just investing in a company that's just thriving without any problems, right? This token was created as a result of having problems, right? But sometimes with that comes opportunity. So, but it's an all or nothing for me. So I'm not putting stops, nothing like that. It's like they're either going to succeed as a business and they'll be around for another few years at least. And then this will just keep on getting scarce and scarce as they keep buying back. And then eventually that'll probably put a lot of buying pressure on scarcity and stuff. And the price will just keep rising as a result. Apparently they intend on buying all of it back, but I don't even know if that's possible. I don't know. I don't know if that's possible. I mean, what if some people don't want to ever sell? How do you buy them all back? So that's kind of an existential question right there. Unless they just do like an automatic, redemption or something like that. They can render their token worthless and force people to sell it. So what does Leo do? That's basically it. It's almost like a gray zone security token. It's like you're basically owning this token and sharing in the profits, and how you share in the profits is they buy back and burn it and reduce scarcity. So basically, like any profit they make, I think it's a certain percentage, 25% or something like that. So that's basically it. They kind of created like an interesting debt instrument. They said, hey folks, we're in some hot water right now. Tether's not fully capitalized, only 80% capitalized because they lost some money, or some money is frozen from crypto capital that got seized and so on and so forth. So like we want to be fully capitalized again. So they basically did an IEO, initial exchange offering, sold their own token, and like, hey, if you want to buy this, you're pretty much buying some debt, and in repayment, we'll pay you with future profit by buying back off of the market. That's the general concept of it. It's very much gray zone. I think it's kind of like gray legality depending on jurisdiction. Obviously, they've got their lawyers and such, but this isn't typical, or typical finance, right? These are kind of new tokenized products. So I I don't know. They've been around enough. I'm willing to take a swing and have some. I mean, if it popped to 10x, I'd be happy. It'd be fine. And if it went to crap, well, that's the nature of the game. Don't put in more than one can afford to lose. And I put in a bit. When I see some more price discovery, I might put in a bit more just to spice it up a bit. But I'm still going to keep it to a manageable amount that if it completely went to zero, it's okay. Basically, I just use a portion of the profit that I cashed out on that recent Bitcoin parabola, where I sold just under 13,000, sorry, 1,300. I sold at the bottom that didn't exist at $1,300. I just gave them all away. Anyways, no. $13,000 sold some Bitcoin at that level just because it was going too parabolic, and I just knew it was a high probability it would crash. So I was like, what do, right? You're a cat taking a nap in the grass and a mouse runs by your face. What are you going to do? Right? You're going to chase the bloody mouse, right? That's what you do. It's instinct. So I see a stupid parabolic market. Didn't necessarily intend on selling more, but hey, it's going to crash. Then might as well make a little bit of money off of it. So have some fun. Anyways, so I invested a portion of that. Probably, let me figure out the percentage of the money that so if it was, let's say about 13% of the profit that I cashed out. So I basically had some fiat. Some of it went into Doge. Some of it went into Leo. And probably about 70% of it still sitting in cash, waiting possibly for a lower dip on Bitcoin or some other opportunity that I see in the market that I want to toss some money at. So I did that. I just want some liquid cash, basically. And it's a lot faster to sell Bitcoin in the parabolic market than pull it out of the bank and wait 4 days and so on and so forth. So tax bill is going to be a bit higher than anticipated this year. Just trying to keep it low, but whatever. Good problem to have, I guess. So, and of course, if Tezos ramps up parabolic next week, then might have to take a little profit off of that too. Small amount, like maybe like 5% of my overall Tezos holdings. $10, another chunk, $50. Anyway, so those are the ones that I'm interested in. Obviously, Tezos is doing the best today out of all the top 100 coins. Has those moments, where it just kind of just kind of bleeds out, does a whole lot of nothing, and it has these independent moments where it bucks the entire market and then shines for a bit. So yeah, it depends. Depends how parabolic. So question is, why not more than 5%? You can buy back more profit, maybe even 10%. But why not? Because there's also the whole baking cycle stuff. It's was it 20, 23 or 35 days or something like that to get a cycle going. So someone's asking about Chainlink. I'm not entirely familiar with the fundamentals on Chainlink. This could be an interesting little buy zone. So it's saying, what about this? It's at 0.618. That could, this is the way I would treat this. If I were to buy it at this area, I would set I don't know, 6% stop. And then if it crashed lower, I'd set a 6% stop. Actually, there's two ways that I could trade this, that one could trade this. One is you take a stab here, you cut out. If it breaks support, little bit under support's about 6%. You cut out 6%, not a big deal. The other is you buy a smaller position here and you have and if you cut out 6%, then take that capital, toss it here at the 0.78 zone. If it doesn't bounce off this area, it'll probably bounce off of this area. Another one is you could just buy some and then average down, have a larger order down here. Two different ways to cut the cake. The stop would be the more conservative way. And this would be the more aggressive way. So it's kind of an interesting level. Anything else standing out? As far as news, interesting news, SEC starting to run nodes now, Bitcoin and Ethereum nodes and different types of nodes. So technically, the United States government is officially running crypto nodes. It's kind of come a long way, 10 years, huh? So that's the next phase. If suddenly governments start getting involved in Bitcoin, as in start buying Bitcoin, none of them have actually went out and bought Bitcoin. Some own Bitcoin as a result of confiscation and stuff like that, civil forfeiture, stuff like that. But I don't think any have overtly signaled that they were buying. If they were, they certainly are not talking about it. All right, we'll look at, so other than that, not a ton of news, just tends to be a lot of crypto drama in general, but not doesn't seem like there's a ton of news. So we'll just look at some tickers. Any tickers that you folks want to look at? Here's, just go to the Q&A section. Is using a bot advisable to increase my portfolio? So tickers or questions, if you have any questions, let's just open this up for about 20 minutes of Q&A, and then we'll have a probably a shorter update today. Okay, so is using a bot advisable to increase my portfolio? It can be. It really depends on the bot, right? If it's a commercial public use bot, like sold en masse, the probability of it being profitable is probably very low. It becomes a very crowded strategy, and then people can trade against that, exploit it. That said, if it's a bot that isn't widely used commercially, and it's just maybe a bot used that a developer has, and he maybe sold some within a small group of people, then it could be more profitable. And then if you're a developer or you hire a developer and you create your own bot and you keep it to yourself or to a close group, tighter group, then obviously if it's a good strategy, it'll have a lot more edge. That said, I do know people who have written bots. Some of them wrote successful bots, and I know some people who wrote bots that weren't successful. Sometimes bots can glitch out and stuff as well. So really depends on the bot. That's really depends on the bot. All right, look at BAT. So what was the news on BAT? You can now earn by using the Brave browser. Is that it? It just opened up to that. You can withdraw. I think that news kind of, there was something new that happened a few weeks ago in relation to that. It's the price action so-so. It's, you know, it's not terribly exciting, but this is kind of the stage that altcoins are in. You know, it's a very much feels like a 2016 market. You know, 2016 market and altcoins is very range bound, very choppy markets that would pump up into resistance and then have full retraces, and then they Sometimes they'd break out and have higher lows and then shoot all the way back down. And it's just very choppy, right? And then you had some few markets that had their own independent bull trends that were very strong, such as Ethereum. Ethereum definitely was the MVP, was the star player of 2016, right? It had the biggest bull market in 2016, bigger than anything, bigger than what Bitcoin did in 2016, bigger than other altcoins. But a lot of other altcoins are just kind of chopping around, right? Very range bound. I'll show you some examples of ones that we were trading back then. There was Factom. I'm sure some people who have been around remember Factom. This is like a really just choppy. Look at 2016. Look at this. You know, it would spike up, do some crazy stuff. I mean, this is higher than a 10x on the BTC charts. So that's pretty good. You know, that's still really, really good returns if you bought down here, right? And then it did this. I mean, everybody would be happy with those kind of returns. So, but then the downside, you shoot up parabolic and it was very illiquid. Then suddenly it was like going through these absurd market cycles. Like, oh, we're just going to go up 8,000%. We're going to crash 87%. And then we're just going to go up, 555%. And then we're just going to crash. Obviously, there could be some good trade action here. See a pattern, buy low, sell high, buy low, sell high, try to buy as low as you can. It's not always pretty. It's not always fun. I mean, think about it. You have periods like this. And there's a lot of people crying about altcoins on Twitter. Alts are dead, alts are crap, alts will never hit the all-time highs again, alts will never pump, alts keep punishing, all this stuff, right? But you can kind of tell that a lot of people haven't even experienced a full market cycle yet. A lot of people joined in 2017, which isn't, it wasn't from accumulation to accumulation. That would have been, like parabola to parabola is a market cycle. Accumulation to accumulation is a market cycle. A lot of people came in when Bitcoin broke the all-time highs. So they weren't around when altcoins were just very wild, volatile, and just very choppy. This is still, even though these are absurd gains and drops, it's still very range bound, as you can see. But you had this period right here, slow bleed, where from here to here, pretty much 100 days of this market dropping, and it had this slow bleed right here, right? And it breaks out, does it again, another slow bleed, and then, then it got caught up in the 2017 mayhem. Finally broke the ascending triangle just to go parabolic and crash and retrace lower than it was, and then eventually just die. Right now, this market's like pretty dead until it's not, until it does this again. Then suddenly everyone's going to be talking about it again. Well, maybe, this market is very pale in comparison to what it was. So obviously not everything gets to survive or thrive. A lot of stuff, a lot of chaff has to die. Obviously the volume's pathetic. This used to be a top, I believe it was a top 10 at one point, market cap. Now it's in the gutter. Page 2, volume's drying up. And it got delisted from a bunch of exchanges. This is the nature of the beast, right? There's another market that also kind of died. That was kind of a cool market to trade back into. Geez, I think this market really died. Counterparty, remember that? That one was like, I remember when Counterparty was a top 10, another top 10 player. This is truly dead. I mean, it got delisted from everything. I think probably I wouldn't be surprised if the developers abandoned it. I guess it's still kind of here just for show, but it's got delisted off of everything, right? So not every altcoin is going to survive. So you really gotta, but this was just a layer 2 token on top of Bitcoin. you know, for creating, it was a layer 2 token to create layer 2 tokens on top of Bitcoin. Stratus was another one that did big moves that's kind of starting to fizzle and die. Right? So not all the star players are sticking around. You know, made a lot off Stratus, but this one's just kind of fizzling away, breaking new lows, volume drying up. I think it's like at the bottom of, I haven't looked at Grin in a while. I'm going to just look at that just out of my own curiosity. Stratus, I think, just got bumped. Right? It just got bumped to page 2. Right? The volume's drying up. This one was like a huge grand slam in 2017. So, I mean, one can go with old projects, but, you know, if the hype gets stale, if development gets stale, if the project gets stale and people lose interest in the market, you know, it could just kind of fizzle, right? And obviously, there's some old school projects that are still kicking around strong. Litecoin's like, you know, the real MVP altcoin champion. It's been around longer than all of these, since 2012, and it's still in the top 5, right? So this has been consistently in the top 10 forever. So that's and the halving's coming up soon. Like maybe even in days. One sec. 3 days. 3 days, 15 hours. It's August 5th. Let's look at that Litecoin halving. See if there's any Hey, BTC Kyle. Yeah, no, I'm still holding all my Tezos position. So I'm still holding, baking. Looks like Litecoin's starting to ramp up, leading up to the halving. It's having some halving hype. Obviously, this halving hype gave it some extra mileage that other coins didn't get, right? 583%. What's interesting about this recent bounce in altcoins, about this most recent alt season, is that most altcoins actually underperformed Bitcoin, except for a handful of, I don't know, I haven't been really following the smaller caps as much because they're not that liquid. But I did list on Twitter, I did list some that gained higher than Bitcoin did. Tezos was one of them. So people can go on and on about opportunity costs and this and this and that, but you know, at the end of the day, there's still altcoins gaining over Bitcoin, right? So, you know, so Bitcoin from low to high. So by low, I mean, you know, November, December 2018 to high, recent peaks, wherever its peak was. Bitcoin was 340%, ETH 342%, Litecoin 554%, EOS 447%, Link 954%, Tezos 490%, Riven 694%, BAT 384%, BNB 810%. Even the B caches had big gains. In spite of whether or not I like these projects, they still had some gains. You know, that's 554%. It's not bad. You know, 400%, not bad. So obviously one would make more if you cash out on the peak into Bitcoin, so on and so forth. Depends how active one is trading. Otherwise, you know, those probably, like on the USD charts, would probably still be higher lows, higher levels established in this larger market cycle. All right. Looking at some other tickers, BTT. So yeah, Litecoin's coming up. Let's see if there's a big sell in the news. If it's parabolic. Let's see. This one underperformed. Or did it? Maybe not. No, it didn't. It didn't. BTT is another one that did all right. Sold off. Let's see. What's it doing on the BTC chart? BTC charts. Still very much. It's not super clean. It's kind of just grinding right at support here. Even wick down a little bit. That snaps. It could get a bit of a slow bleed, slow grind out. If it bounces, you end up with a nice sharp double bomb. Oh, it's a low Satoshi coin too. On Binance. What's the volume on BTT? Those low Satoshi coins can make some pretty substantial gains when they do pump. Volume's not terrible. It's dried up a bit on Binance compared to what it was. I think it was over 100 million. Supply distribution looks a little bit funky. I don't know all the fundamentals on supply distribution, but there's a whole lot more that's locked up than what's actually circulating. So actually, one thing that I talked about too is how Ripple was pretty much the worst performing crypto of 2019. It underperformed everything except for things that got delisted and died. But if we're to measure it from here, 80% underperformed everything. Anything that I can think of, unless it's talking about Tether, stable coins or whatever. And the reason for that, on a fundamental note, the reason for that is because, I think last quarter they sold $250 million more Ripple. And there's actually a bot where you could track it on Twitter every time they unlock Ripple from Treasury. It means they're selling it to exchanges or on OTC on the market. So that's just like a huge flood of supply that they just keep selling. So that's, in my opinion, that's one of the reasons why it's been underperforming. That said, it's still a top 3 market just because it has a high supply and the price is relatively stable. It actually even underperformed Zcash, believe it or not. Zcash at least went up 148% from the lows. That's still fairly pathetic, though, compared to the other numbers we're looking at. It underperformed Bitcoin. Excuse me. It's still in the slow grind, a slow bleed. It's kind of in this bear channel, just grinding away. Now, Zuko's probably pissing off a lot of people because he wants to reinstate. He's now whining about development, wants to reinstate the founder reward or whatever, hard fork or anyways, whatever. Zcash is my worst bag out of everything, worst performing investment. At this point, I'm holding it. I mean, whatever, I'm not going to sell it. So it's either going to maybe it completely fizzles and dies, or it ends up turning into a Ripple and a Litecoin where everyone hated it and they're considered garbage coins in 2016. And then they basically pumped and melted everyone's faces off. It can happen. This in crypto. I've seen it happen many times before, and it's way too popular to hate this coin right now. So I'm not selling it. I mean, I'm not going to be a plebe and just sell the bottom or whatever. It could go lower. I don't care. You know, it's at a loss. One could tax harvest it, of course, but I'd say that for me, I'd usually want to reserve something like that, maybe closer to the end of the tax season before assessing situations like that. And then technically in other investments, I think there's a 30-day wash sale rule where you're not supposed to buy back in after 30 days. But crypto's a bit different, you know, especially when you think about Bitcoin, which is often used as a base currency to trade with. I think it'd be very difficult to implement wash sale rules around trading Bitcoin, for example. If you trade BTC pairs for altcoins, right? So anyways, so I'm not gonna sell. That said, let's say one does sell, realizes a tax loss, and then flips that money to something else that regains a lot of the loss, then that could also be strategic. I've done that with other things before. It's like creative coin shuffling. But I'm not going to do it with Zcash. I mean, I'm kind of annoyed at the whole founder reward thing and such. But it does kind of remind me of Ripple and Litecoin in 2016. Similar, we used to call Litecoin the Rock because it just kept sinking. Now look at it, right? So we'll see. It takes time. I don't think the project's going to die, though, anytime soon. I think it'll still be around for at least another cycle. So what's cool, though, one thing that's interesting is Tezos wants to implement the Zcash technology, which would make Tezos stronger and even start to render this more obsolete. So that could be an interesting play. Do I know about 3 commas? Do I know of 3 commas? I don't. What is my feeling on Ledger X? I think it's great. I think it's great. I believe it's Bitcoin settled futures as well. And they seem like they're competing directly against Bakkt. But I don't know enough about it. I haven't traded them, so I'd have to look at the specific details. But I think it's good. I think it'll allow for more institutional investors and stuff to get access to Bitcoin. Just, you know, Bitcoin. I'm a huge fan of Bitcoin settled derivatives. So LedgerX and Bakkt, I think, are going to be a lot better for the bullishness of Bitcoin as far as the supply and demand dynamic. Because if you settle in real Bitcoin, then at the end of the day, you end up having to go buy real Bitcoin off of the spot or OTC markets. So that will affect the supply and demand dynamic versus futures that are just settled in USD. That's just hot air. You can create an infinite amount of that, right? So as an accumulation play for BTC, not quite sure what that's relating to. Have you heard updates on when Trust Wallet will begin baking? I haven't seen any news or updates in relation to that. All right. Any other questions before we wrap up? BTT as an accumulation for BTC. Let's see again. You could, if you play it on the BTC charts. Right? Like, even smaller gains. I mean, just up here would be like a double. You know, if it had a retrace when it eventually has a retrace. Right now, it's just it hasn't broken the immediate descending line. You know, even if you threw the Heikin Ashi, it's still red, right? One simple little trick too, if you want a little bit of confirmation, a little bit more confirmation on the dip buy, is you could take something like the Heikin Ashi and you can look at it on the 1D, but then you can look at it on the 1 week, right? And you see something like even with Tezos, it's like red, 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 broke green. We might see some more green. Same thing could possibly said for this. You know, let it bleed out. Then when it breaks green, that could be a buy signal. What exchanges? Bitfinex. Let's see if the order book's thicker on Binance. Yeah, so the liquidity is fairly good on Binance. This could be like a Doge play, you know? It's a newer market, but if you ended up buying some low and it just does, like even goes to 34 Satoshis, popping 400%. So yeah, this could be a play to accumulate more Bitcoin. I wouldn't go all in on the first. You know, if I were to trade this, I would set an aside, set an amount of Bitcoin I want to trade with. And then I'd use a percentage of that in my first buy. If it goes lower, I could average down. If it goes higher, I can pyramid trade it up. Both of those would be following the principles of buying low because it's at the lower end of the spectrum. The downside is if this just fizzles out. I mean, you know, this is a bit of a descending triangle that did snap. So could tactically wash out more than what it has, right? Like this did kind of break. So we're kind of in new price discovery to the downside. So it could go lower. You think it's low, but if it went to, 4 Satoshis, that's a 44% drop. So that's why you don't go all in on the first stack, right? On the first buy. That said, this could just be, quick little stop order hunting below support and then, hit a bounce. But low Satoshi coins can be interesting when they do take off. Isn't BitMEX also BTC settled? So what's the difference between BitMEX and LedgerX except for BitMEX is forbidden for U.S. residents? Yeah, there's that. So LedgerX is open to U.S. residents. But I think profit is settled in BTC on BitMEX. I believe on LedgerX, you can buy futures. Like let's say you didn't use any leverage at all. You just bought 1x. Then you could probably get that 1x settled in spot. They would give you spot Bitcoin. I don't know the full details. I haven't traded LedgerX, so I'm not an expert on that by any means. But I'll do some more reading on it. Let me just make note of that so I don't forget. Since it's launching all that stuff, see if I can make a comparison for next week between the two, and then maybe even look at some other ones, how that could compare to Backed, Bitfinex, so on and so forth. But yeah, BitMEX profit is settled in BTC. All right, hot. And it just keeps bleeding out, right? Kind of snapped this immediate support here. I wouldn't be buying any. I still have 60% of my original position. I basically took out my risk capital with some profit. So basically it's all just helicopter money at this point, what I have left. But I I'm not going to sell at the low. So whatever I have left, I'm only going to sell when it's green and it pumps. And if it doesn't pump and it just dies, then that's it. I already made profit off of it. So I'm willing to hold and see if it can make another spike up. Maybe I'd take some more if it did, if it had another spike. Obviously, if it broke a new high, I would sell some more. This is a bit of a descending triangle right now. So it could end up bleeding out into the low Satoshis again. USD-wise, still believe it's higher than when I bought it on the USD charts. Because I didn't buy it on Binance. I bought it before Binance on, what the heck was it called? That exchange. For ERC20 tokens. I only trade on that exchange once. IDEX, thank you. I was thinking ETHFinex. No, IDEX. That's it. Bought on IDEX for I think it was 4 or 5 Satoshi. So that's the thing. That's the thing with altcoins, right? You gotta, like, when you see some profit, you gotta take some off the table. But sometimes you have to be patient. Sometimes it'll have full retraces and stuff. So if you take some off the table and take out your risk capital and a bit of profit, then that usually takes the pressure, the stress off the trade while allowing one to be patient. And, altcoins can sometimes often be like all or nothing plays a lot of times, right? They're extremely volatile, so it's not very easy to set stops on them. You could possibly lose more money just getting stopped out, even on profitable trades, versus letting it breathe, selling when it's in the green, buying when it's in the red, letting it breathe, doing its thing. I think right now, fundamentally, this is all going to be dependent on their product launch, right? Successful launch, suddenly we would probably see life being breathed back into this market. Delays, vaporware, infighting, stuff like that. That's how projects die. That said, if I didn't have any of this at all, it's certainly at the lower end of the spectrum as far as like buy low, sell high, right? But one could just wait. Again, look at the 1 week. One could just wait for it to shift green on the Hikinashi again. Wait for a little bit of confirmation, just like here, right? Bleeding out, bleeding out, bleeding out. Don't have to guess the bottom. Then all of a sudden you have this little green candle right here. It closes neutral, breaks out, and then suddenly you get these large green candles. Boom, boom, boom. Followed by that candle there, followed by 4 weeks of green and some parabolic. Now it's just kind of been bleeding out, bleeding out, bleeding out. If it shifts green, pops, then that could be a signal to enter into the market. It's just one way of doing it, a little bit more confirmation versus just trying to, sometimes I'll take stabs at, buying at support or whatever before it makes a move. Could squeeze a few more percentage out of the market, but it also comes with some risk as well. So, do you think BTC consolidation as a symmetrical triangle will lead to a higher degree of alt season, or only when BTC breaks all-time highs? I think that consolidation in a triangle would definitely give some room for some alts to do fairly well. I think we could end up seeing like a similar 2016 scenario where you have a few markets that do really, really well, like what Ethereum did. I'm gunning for Tezos to be that market. Right, that's what I've been gunning for pretty much all year. Thus far, it has outperformed many other altcoin markets this year. So, and it has been growing nicely. So I think I've been fairly on point as far as my fundamental analysis and my hypothesis in relation to it as an investment. Thus far, I haven't been getting any, negative. It has growing pains, right? A few weeks ago, remember how what was it, a month ago, a lot of people are all pissed about Tezos. It's not getting listed on enough exchanges. Oh, there's a lawsuit, there's this, there's that, blah, blah, blah. But it's one thing, like surface fundamental issues versus deep technological fundamental issues. You know, technological fundamental issue would be, oh, we voted for a new protocol upgrade and it went horribly wrong and the whole network froze and then hard forked and, you know, half the nodes dropped off the network or something like that. That is a huge technical glitch and a fundamental problem. Market sentiment, people complaining they're being too impatient, hasn't been listed on enough exchanges, blah, blah, blah. Or some frivolous lawsuit from some vultures trying to squeeze some money out. Like, I don't know where the loss is exactly or how they're going to prove a loss because, you know, Tezos is way higher than ICO price. So I don't know. I don't think that those cases have a lot of merit. There's a lot of kind of opportunists that just try to, they see a big, you know, a project that raised over $200 million, they get dollar signs, they think, okay, maybe we can go scavenge some loot out of that, right? In a court. But anyways, the network's still live and decentralized, and fundamentally it seems like it's growing, it's getting better. See a lot of excited developers enjoying building on Tezos, and I see a lot of education, training new developers around the world, right? So I'm seeing a lot of growth. Thus far, my thesis is correct, but it takes time. None of these markets that were winners in 2017, many of them took a few years to actually get cooking. If you were in the trenches, you had to wait it out. You could have traded the ranges and stuff and the volatility, but it takes patience. And then obviously we know that not all coins are rewarded. Many of them also die. So you got to choose wisely, right? So I felt like I picked what I felt was the best. I like stuff like Cosmos too, but like I said, it's too high above the ICO price. And then a break of all-time high on Bitcoin, yeah, I think that could lead to like a really nice alt season like we saw in 2017. That would be shifting from a 2016 to a 2017 type scenario. So we'll see how that all plays out. Obviously, everything happens a little bit differently. Nothing happens exactly the same. So there's usually slight variances and differences. But to me, I look at this market and I see this. Now these candles are growing. The volume's increasing. To me, this looks like a very, very early stage market, right? This doesn't have a lot of price discovery. We're early adopters in this market. It hasn't really shown, even though it gained significantly over other coins, it hasn't. This is like one leg up. This is like its first leg up in a bull market period. It could have done a full retrace, of course, but you know, they timed the snooze well. Obviously, someone must have been scooping up here at that dollar zone as well. Probably people accumulating to get their, you know, 7% returns or whatever. But this just kind of looks like one leg up, one wave up. You know, it's even like a bit of a little bit of a descending wedge type formation. So we'll see. So far, so good. This candle thus far is starting to look similar to this one right here. This weekly candle. See how much more momentum. So we're 38% up on this weekly. So if we can generate enough momentum, nice large candle, break out, that'd be nice. Yeah, exactly. BTC Call saying, I love how some security tokens will be using Tezos as a base layer. When you start seeing banks and investment institutions and stuff tokenizing real estate and STOs on a particular blockchain, it's a step in the right direction. You obviously see something in that, probably in the formal verification and such. So I just think the market's catching up with the fundamentals. I think it's been not like under the radar for a lot of people, and that's a good thing. You don't want things to be too crowded, right? Ripple right now is extremely crowded trade. Everybody and their grandmother owns Ripple, right? It's extremely crowded market. Obviously, people made a crap ton of money off of Ripple in 2017. All the power to them. I personally, I'm not a fan of the model, but I don't necessarily hate on it per se. So. Exactly. The market's going to be huge. Not a lot of people understand it now, but yeah, if Tezos gets involved, this is bullish sign for sure. Anyways, so yeah, formal verification on smart contracts, governance. Governance is huge. Governance is like, when you think about it, blockchain in and of itself and decentralization in and of itself is all about a governance model. It's not about automating and decentralizing governance, using technology for that. So this is like an evolution of that. How far, like what can blockchain do? How far can it go? Voting for core protocol changes. That sounds like an upgrade to me as far as the tech is concerned, right? And if it starts, the thing is, it can start to amalgamate other features from other blockchains. So just kind of get stronger and stronger. And it might have some hiccups, some glitches too. We'll see. But so far, so good. So, all right, folks, we'll end it there. 1 hour, 21 minutes. So a bit of a shorter update today. But let's see what the week brings us. Let's see if we can break this bloody high on this Coinbase news. And then obviously the probabilities of a big sell in the news on Coinbase is fairly high, but at max I'll sell like 10%. I'm not going to sell more than that. Not like I need to see like at least $10 or more to sell a higher chunk than that. But I've got some pretty high targets. Maybe I'm being maybe I'm being too greedy, but so far I'm getting paid just holding it, right? It's self-accumulating, so I'm not being punished for holding it. So, all right, folks, have a great weekend. Take care. Cheers.